Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Woo-wee! Happy Monday! Welcome to The Last Show. Here's what you're going to learn if you tune in to tonight's program. Medical researchers have found that damage to a specific brain pathway might trigger criminal behavior. Seriously. Could the results of a brain scan change how we think about guilt, justice, and our own free will to keep ourselves from committing crimes? We'll tackle that in about 10 minutes' time. Then, one of our team members, Tony 5, has a mom who's not quite a hoarder, but let's just say if you open one of her closets, you better be wearing a helmet. She's got decades of stuff, and like many who've got lots of tchotchkes, no plan for what happens when she's gone. Enter Swedish death cleaning. It's not as morbid as it sounds. It's a surprisingly loving way to prepare for the inevitable. To spare your loved ones the act of sorting through every expired spice jar and broken lamp. Halfway through the hour, we'll talk to an expert about how it all works and why it might be an extremely kind thing you can do for your family. All right, that's just some of what you'll learn on tonight's program. There will be more, but for now, let's talk about a little arts festival in the desert I'll be attending called Burning Man. You might remember it from the mudstorm a few years ago.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
We are here with foreign correspondent Tony 5 to discuss a desert romp that I will be going to on vacation. It's called Burning Man. It's an art festival, and I'm sure you might have seen clips on the news of naked people celebrating, looking at art, listening to music. We're going to demystify what this thing is and why on earth anyone would go to something like that. Tony 5, welcome to the show.
David, it's good. The radio landscape will be a desert without you and I. So let's discuss what alternative use of your time you're going to use instead of being on this show, entertaining listeners far and wide.
Exactly. So I'm going to be out. We've had someone on the show recently named Caitlin Green. She's going to be at the helm. Tony will be on the show with her every now and again. But yeah, I will be taking the time off for the next 3 weeks. And I feel like a lot of radio people just disappear. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they don't talk about their vacations.
Weirdly, there's a really big radio star in the UK, and he disappeared, and like loads of people called into the show thinking he was dead, and actually he'd just gone on his honeymoon. So like, it's good that you're telling people that, you know, you're going away and stuff. So, but like, for those who don't know what Burning Man is about, and for those who like personal hygiene, could you just go like what it's about?
In short, it's an art festival. In long, it's 2.5 hours from the closest civilization. Now, that civilization is the city of Reno in Nevada, so calling it civilization is open to debate there. Okay. It's just like a government park, like, you know, federal land, a state park. I don't know. What do you call that in the UK? Or do you not have public land?
Public land.
Public land, boom.
Right, but talk me through it. So like, because I know nothing about this event. You've asked me for a number of years. You don't just turn up there. You have to have an invite. Is that right? Or is it a paid for ticket?
You have to get a ticket, but you really should be going with people because you got to bring your own shelter. You got to bring your own food. You got to bring your own water. And I know a lot of people think, okay, that's just camping, but it's camping in the middle of the desert. It's a dried up lake, like a salt lake. So it's not sand. It's like dried up lake bed.
Yeah. Salt lake bed. Yeah.
It's punishing the weather. It's what, like 40 degrees Celsius during the day, 2 degrees Celsius at night. Like it drops from 100 Fahrenheit to like, I don't know, 40 Fahrenheit. It really is a punishing environment. It's dry. It's dusty. You got to wear dust masks. It's like no one on earth would ever want to go there. So everyone who does go really has to make an effort. And that's something that's so special about it. Everyone who's there kind of wants to be there. There is no casual going for 5 hours.
No, and the effort and the cost of stuff is not what you would assume to be. I imagine this place to be just full of degenerates, which it is, but it's degenerates that have got, disposable income.
Some will bring RVs with air conditioning and showers, and others will be in like horrible tents that they got secondhand and they barely have any money. And in order to try to get artists there to make their art, the organization gives out both art grants and tickets at a lower cost point for people who have a lower income who are artists. So it's not just a community of like rich people spectating this crazy event. It really is a mix of people from all walks of life.
So it hasn't become like a Coachella yet, has it? It's not been like, has it become diluted since you've been going for how long?
I've been going since 2013, 12 years.
So how have you found it from then till now? What's that kind of, because you obviously still like it. Like, how has it been? Has it become sort of diluted? Has it become a bit more commercial, or has it still been the same? What do you think?
I think it's a mix, right? There are celebrities. A few years ago, people probably would have heard about this event, many for the first time because it got rained in. And when it rains, the desert gets wet. The dried salt bed turns into muck and you get stuck. You can't drive. Like tires will just get gross and filled with mud and they'll get stuck. So everyone was stuck there for a few days, and a couple celebrities who went walked out. They're like, this, I'm not going to hang out in the desert. I'm just going to walk to safety. So there are these celebrities who go who have cushy setups, but no one gets paid to go. It's not like Coachella where it's a concert and there's artists that get special passes and perform.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of equally there to participate. And if there are big concerts, the stages, they're not built by the organization. They're built by the people camping there. So if I'm a celebrity and I want to put on a concert, I got to raise enough money to build my own stage. And that's what makes it kind of cool. Everything there is like driven by the people who go, not by like a booked number of acts. So in that way, it's fundamentally different than Coachella.
Is there any like structure there, like a timetable of events or things like that? Like, how do people know what's going on? Like, you just said there's no like artist or performer, but what is it like? So I turn up day one. What do I do? Like, I turn up, I've got my RV, I've got my shelter, my water, my porta potty. And how do I know what's going on? What do I do? It sounds so confusing.
It's funny, when you enter, they give you a booklet, and it's called the What, Where, and When booklet. And it's a list of events that are happening in the city. But those events are not like created by the organization. Prior to the Burning Man event, all these people that are putting on shows and workshops and concerts and yoga and sex parties. I mean, there are sex parties.
Again, it sounds amazing, but you just mentioned the city. You didn't explain what the city was, because like you said, it was a lake bed, but this place turns into a city, a named city, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's called Black Rock City. And all the people going, pitch tents, set up structures, build scaffolding, they build the city on their campsite.
Amazing.
But that booklet that's going to tell you what to do, to your prior question, it's like, imagine I'm Tony and I want to set up a workshop to teach people how to juggle naked, okay? That's your thing.
I love it.
Okay?
Yeah, it is.
You would just submit, like anyone else, a little like, okay, here's what I'm doing and here's the time I'm doing it and here's the place I'm doing it. You would submit that to the organization, even though you're paying to go, even though they're not funding your naked juggling workshop, and then they'll publish it as part of the list of events in the city. So that's how people know what to do. You as a participant, as an attendee throwing something, you will advertise what you're doing before you go, and that's how people will know about it. Other than that, it's all word of mouth.
That's amazing. It sounds so feral.
The crazy thing is, people think, oh, you're going on vacation. The city has a radio station, okay?
Right.
And it's like the one source of media for the city, because cell phones don't really work. Like, there's spotty reception. There's not enough cell towers. They used to not work at all. Now they kind of just don't work most of the time. So the main media outlet for the city is a volunteer-run radio station. And that's where I work. So just like I do radio for my job, I'm doing fun, weird, hippie, experimental, like, I don't know, play the same song over for 1 hour, or take calls and mess with the callers in a way that seems like surreal and weird. Do self-referential jokes. Think of like the music of Twin Peaks personified as a radio show. That's the kind of work I do there.
And people listen to it and they hang on your every word, don't they?
Well,
because there's not a lot else to do.
That's exactly right. Anyway, that's where I'll be. We'll talk more about it tomorrow because I'm not leaving till Wednesday. And Tony, thanks so much for being on the show and talking to me about Burning Man.
David, always a pleasure. I hope you don't have to too much in a hole.
It's a porta potty, Tony, a porta potty. Coming up next, medical researchers have discovered that damage to a very specific brain pathway might actually cause a law-abiding citizen to start committing crimes. Could this area of the brain change how we think about guilt, punishment, even free will? The science is wild, the implications wilder. We'll tell you about it in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
Cooper's Law tells us that the complexity of a relationship is inversely proportional to its explanation. You're listening to The Last Show with David Cooper.
What if a brain injury could flip a switch and turn a law-abiding person into a criminal? Well, new research suggests that damage to one specific brain pathway might just do that, which to me raises wild questions about free will, responsibility, the science of morality, and how our brain health can affect criminality. I'm here with Dr. Isaiah Kletenik, who's an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School and behavioral neurologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Isaiah, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
This is kind of a compelling headline. Is your research shocking people? Like, how can a brain injury actually cause someone to start committing crimes? This seems like a wild finding.
I think it goes back to a bigger question in terms of how the brain is involved in mediating social behavior and having us recognize what rules are and how we function in society. And if one comes with the belief that the brain is important for mediating social behavior, then the idea that an injury to the brain might disrupt those circuits and disrupt that function could lead to alterations in behavior.
This really does sound like stuff out of a courtroom drama. Have there been cases in the past where we found criminals and then after the fact we do an autopsy, look at their brain and see that certain pathways were damaged and that could have led to this criminal behavior?
Yeah, so I think already there was interest going back to the University of Texas shooter back 40 or 50 years ago was the beginning of some of these discussions about this. That was the Charles Whitman case,
yes,
where there were thoughts that it may be associated with changes to his brain. But there's been interest for quite a long time in terms of how the brain is involved in mediating morality and behavior in general. Now, I'd say that while it doesn't just have to be in the courtroom, I'd say in my clinic, I very frequently see patients who have alterations in their social behavior. And a lot of how you interpret those behaviors is whether you consider that to be a criminal act or not. So many people can have changes in social behavior with different brain diseases, whether degenerative diseases or strokes.
Sure. But let's talk about this pathway, the right uncinate, you're going to have to say it for me. My Latin's.
The uncinate fasciculus. It's one of my favorite No. So the brain is composed of kind of gray matter neurons, and then there are these white matter connections that are these cables that connect all the different parts of the brain. And so if you imagine any complex behavior requires multiple different brain regions to be working in combination and in collaboration with each other. And so a complex social behavior such as, maintaining the law, let's say, not harming another person, that must involve many different parts of the brain. You must be able to kind of know what the social appropriate behaviors are, which is you kind of don't push somebody. You have to be able to, understand and process your emotions. If you're getting into a negative interaction with somebody, you have to then inhibit your behavior. So there's a whole host of different elements that are part of normal social behavior. And you can imagine, so if this uncinate connects the prefrontal part of the brain, the part of the brain involved in social behavior, social decision-making, with the amygdala, an important part of the brain involved in emotion processing. So one of the ideas and thoughts is that if you disconnect emotion processing and regulation from behavioral control, that can lower the threshold for somebody to be able to commit an act that would harm another person.
So this uncinate in a healthy brain, it's sort of like a major intersection for all these functions the brain is providing. And when it's damaged, that intersection stops functioning properly. That can lead to criminal behavior.
Well, I think there's a whole host of different factors. Remember, these cases are rare. There are many people who have injury to this part of the brain and do not commit criminal acts. And there are most people who are committing criminal acts do not have a brain injury. This is very, very rare cases, and rare cases that allow us to have a window into the brain's function. Lesions, the onset of a brain injury which changes function, goes to the core of modern neurology to allow us to create brain behavior relationships. The idea is, if a given part of the brain is important for a function like language, when it gets injured, you lose that function. So if a part of the brain is important for social comportment and behavior, and you injure it, then you see the onset of behavior, you can hypothesize that structure is key for that behavior.
I'd like to think I have the free will to choose whether I engage in certain, socially incorrect behaviors, whether they be violent, whether they be criminal, whether they just be harming myself. I don't even know. I'd like to think that I have a choice, but your research suggests that I might not have as much as a choice as I think I do.
The free will discussion and the relation of the brain to free will is a much larger discussion.
We can get that done in 30 seconds, right?
I think we have 30 seconds. No, I think that a key point here is that in every free will engagement and social engagement, there are varying degrees of will and volition. If I told you, hey, don't eat this, let's say you're sitting right there. I'm sure you've been.
I already want to eat what you're saying, and you haven't even said it.
You're eating and drinking normally. I put a cookie in front of you. Said, don't eat this cookie. It might be a free will decision, but it might not take that much effort. If you'd been walking in the desert for a week and I said, don't eat this cookie, it would be very hard for you not to eat that cookie. And I don't know if the changes to the uncinate are the same way in terms of lowering a threshold, but there are plenty of people who have this injury who don't commit crime, but you have to be in the right situation, and perhaps it lowers a threshold. Remember, cause in science is different than culpability in the eyes of the law, okay?
Would you be shocked to see your paper cited in a court of law to try to get somebody off who had this brain pathway damaged?
I think I would be all right with that. And as we begin the paper, we say that right now, neuroimaging is being increasingly introduced in courtrooms. It's being used as evidence, but what happens is instead you have dueling experts who come forward and cite their opinions, and that's very good and important. We're trying to add some additional evidence to this discussion. We're able to say, look, this can help inform the discussion. If somebody has a brain injury, after the brain injury, they start having changes in behavior and commit crimes. This location is a key location to look for to try and relate the behavior to the injury.
Let's talk about your research. How do you even test for this? How do you even come to these conclusions and say definitively or with great evidence that this brain pathway seems to explain criminal behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so before we even began this, there was a whole host of evidence from direct imaging from inmates in prisons who had committed crimes. And what it had shown is that in their diffusion imaging, the imaging that can look at the white matter tract, there were abnormalities in this uncinate fasciculus and in other tracts. But the idea is were those imaging changes causal or compensatory or incidental? These very rare cases that were all reported in the medical literature were cases where patients had had a brain injury and begun committing crimes after the injury. And that allowed us to add some additional causal evidence to this really wide and large body of evidence that was already in existence about these tracts.
Do you think there's a future where we use some unknown technology? Maybe it's nanobots, maybe it's stem cells. I just mean in your wildest imagination, where we could repair this region of the brain and correct criminal behavior, treat it like it's, like depression that you take an antidepressant.
So you're doing the Clockwork Orange idea that
yes,
somehow alter. I don't intend that for it to happen. Let me take it a little bit differently. This tract was also shown to alter empathy in friends and families after a stroke. And so this tract seems to be very important for in empathy and feeling an emotional response to the suffering of others. What if increasing our empathy, I don't know if this is the case, increasing our sensitivity towards the feelings and the suffering of others helps reduce our likelihood of harming others? Does that have an impact on this tract? I don't know. But that would be a very interesting testable hypothesis that is less Clockwork Orange and more, let's see if we can increase our concern for the suffering of others.
Well, it doesn't have to be so Clockwork Orange if it's elective. If you're like, a doctor tells you this area is damaged, do you want to repair it? It may have an effect on your criminal impulses. It doesn't have to be so dystopian. I just wonder if repair can be done to this region of the brain in the future, what impact it would have on us.
It's an important speculation. Injury to the brain is often very challenging to see. There can be improvements and changes with time and rehabilitation, but it's not clear that always relates to anatomic changes.
Well, I look forward to having you on the show in 250 years when we have the technology, and we will debate it then. Isaiah, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me join you.
Dr. Isaiah Kletenik is an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School and behavioral neurologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital. We will be back after the break with foreign correspondent Tony Five as we cover a very interesting concept called Swedish death cleaning. That is a great thing that the older generations in Sweden do for the younger generation. You know, when you're about to die, your house is full of stuff, a lifetime's worth of stuff and paperwork. The Swedes resolve that before their death so that when they die, their estate is in a really good way. It sounds morbid, but it's a kind thing to do, and we'll be back with Tony Five to discuss more of that in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
And we are back with foreign correspondent Tony Five in London, England. Tony, welcome in.
David, always happy to be welcomed.
Tony's mom isn't a hoarder, technically.
Don't call my mum that, David. She was with another couple of men once or twice.
No, that's a different topic.
Okay.
I'm just saying your mom has a lot of stuff. She's got 83 years worth of tchotchkes. And if anyone listening has aging parents, or you are that aging parent, there is something called Swedish death cleaning that might save your family from an avalanche of, expired condiments and emotional landmines. Tony, you're dealing with a house full of stuff as your mother ages, aren't you?
Well, it's not only mum stuff. So my mum's lived in a house since the 60s. It's 100-year-old Victorian property right in the middle of London. But obviously my brother passed away when I was quite young. So we've still got my brother's stuff, and my dad passed away maybe 7-8 years ago, and there's still my dad's stuff. So, and my stuff. Sorry, I didn't even think about that. My stuff from a kid. So you got 3 bedrooms. There's one person in there. You got 3 bedrooms, kitchen and diner and all this sort of stuff. And it stresses me out.
And the house is full of stuff. She's aging. She might want to sell it. The stairs are becoming more difficult. And that's where Swedish death cleaning comes in. And we are here with Katarina Blom, who hosted a television show on NBC called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. She's also a licensed psychologist in Sweden, so she knows a thing or two about this topic. And we're going to go through it because it's so fascinating. Katarina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
Hi, Katarina.
Hello, Tony. I did not forget you.
Let's start with the obvious, but maybe not obvious. What is Swedish death cleaning, and why does it sound like some sort of Nordic metal band that I would go to a concert to?
Well, it's basically just taking ownership of your crap and cleaning out the clutter so that once you pass, your loved ones doesn't have to go through all that garbage. Sorry to say it. Yeah.
It's sort of like a gift to your younger generation as you age. Because I think if you haven't dealt with this, you've heard of it or you have it coming. Someone dies and you've got stacks of papers and things to sell. And just dealing with like their death and the objects they've left behind is a nightmare for some people.
Yeah, it's so unfair because you're in the middle of this bereavement. And then you're supposed to be cognitively very well functioning and taking a lot of hard decisions. It's a very dense moment. So as a parent, or basically actually as anyone, it's very kind and very responsible of us to take care of our things. Because, it's easy to get this picture, like you said in the introduction, that we should start death cleaning when we're old. But actually, we should start death cleaning today because you don't know when you're going to die. Tony doesn't know when he's going to die. It can happen tomorrow.
Well, I disagree with that. I know exactly when I'm going to die. The 24th of April, 2045, about 7 o'clock.
Oh boy, that's oddly dark.
Okay, Tony is the exception to the rule. Yeah. So we should all death clean. And in Sweden, we often do it when we're in some kind of life transition. So death cleaning is a lot about also, it's like almost existential. Like it's a way to honor that life is actually finite. There is limits to us. And we shouldn't shy away from those limits. We should honor them by stepping into that and do I really want to keep this thing forever? Like, will I have a third baby in my case, or should we just let go of this baby stuff now? Because I am transitioning, because life is happening and we're like moving in one direction, which is towards death.
Wait, you're not supposed to just put the baby stuff in your attic and let the boxes pile up and then deal with it forever? That's not what you're supposed to do?
Exactly. That's not what you're supposed to do. And like death cleaning can sound very like mortal and like, oh, we're so in love with the dark side in the Nordics, but it's not at all like that. It's much more life affirming.
It can sound so callous and cold, but the efficiency of the Nordic, and I've spent a lot of time traveling that area and that region. It's so efficient, and I love it. What's your opinion of it? Obviously, you speak about it and you talk about it. Did you think like that all the time, or were you born with that ability? Because obviously you're born in Sweden, or did it something that you kind of fell into?
No, it's actually it's something that we just do in the culture. We don't even talk about it. Like, oh, we're going to do some death cleaning this weekend. You just do it. Like my mom used to death clean with her mom.
Wow.
I have death cleaned with my mom. It's just something you do. It's so ingrained in our culture. But now there's a book written about it that kind of made it into a speakable phenomena.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. It's such a helpful tradition that's now spreading its wings across the world.
It's lovely because in the UK especially, there's a lot of these Nordic cultural things that have kind of passed through. There's a Hygge, I think it's called Hygge, where they have the warmth in the house, which is nice. And then obviously this death cleaning is something I read recently as well, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And also our fika tradition, that's super pivotal to death cleaning. Like you do your death cleaning, you get kind of exhausted, then you have your fika moment with your friends. Cup of coffee, some biscuits, and then you go back to like with refreshed energy.
My goodness, there's even a post-death cleaning celebration, David. We need to do this.
Coffee and a biscuit. It also is just such a nice gift to your family members. I think for me, it has the word death in it. It sounds really negative, sounds really morbid, like you said, but it's actually just such a wonderful thing to do for your family, to have your affairs in order in case you disappear. So the difficulty of losing someone isn't compounded by the difficulty of, I don't know, having to file 1,000 pieces of paper and things like that.
I think as well, because the older generation did keep a lot of stuff, physical stuff in paper and bills and passports. And as we get older, obviously a lot of it is like digital, right? Like sometimes your life can be just contained digitally on like email and stuff. And if you don't have the password, right, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you can leave a digital mess. Is there a digital component to death cleaning? Like, should your computer affairs be in order so that your family can like log into your bank account and like get the money? Or I know that sounds really like transactional money, but is there a digital component to death cleaning?
Yes, of course. And I think it's also being reflected in a lot of bigger companies right now. Like there's some service I know Apple has that you can just type in next of kin, kind of. So in case that I would die, my partner has all my access to all my accounts and stuff. So that's definitely something that you should look into and have a plan for. I love my in-laws. They are very much into death cleaning. So they actually digitalized, like they have a physical USB in a bank vault. And on that USB, you have all the accounts, everything we need to know in case they would die.
The first rule of my will is nobody gets anything unless my browser history is cleared. Please clear my browser history.
See, you say that as a joke, but some of the most personal items, personal sort of thoughts that stay in your mind, all the things that you probably hide from people, may be contained online, right? Like not just the papers and the financial and administrative documents, but like, you know, your deepest, darkest, you know, things that maybe would be judged about you after you die, right?
And I think that's our version of like finding your parents' diaries and finding out about relative secrets. I know in my family, we discovered things once everyone involved had passed away.
Right.
And then we got to hear like, oh, this is really the lineage and so on. And I think that's just...
Wait, you found out about like affairs and wild things that were secrets? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I think that's like, in the olden days, you had to kind of keep a diary. And if you didn't like throw it away, which you might not, then next person would, of course, find it. And within death cleaning, there is actually a tradition that you do a box that says "just for me" box. And there you put everything that you want, that maybe things that are just an enjoyment for yourself, but not make a lot of sense to others. Or maybe it's too personal. You don't want anyone to take care of it. Like, then next of kin should just throw it away.
Just burn it. Don't look at it. Just burn it. David, I need to get a massive box.
Yeah, me too. A lot of weird things that we're hiding. When we come back, I want to get to the crux of it. Tony's mother is dealing with a lot of objects, ephemera in her house that he's worried about as she gets older. I think a lot of us have relatives, older parents, whatever, that have houses filled with stuff. So how do we go from way too much stuff to organized, especially like in a North American or British context where this isn't cultural? That is what we'll discuss here with Katarina Blom, who's a licensed psychologist, TEDx speaker, and author. Check out Katarina on NBC's TV show, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. We are also here with foreign correspondent Tony Five. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show, and when we come back, more Swedish death cleaning.
This is your nightly dose of chaos, confession, and questionable life choices. The Last Show with David Cooper.
And we are back with foreign correspondent Tony Five. Tony, welcome in, my friend.
David, I'm here. I'm loving life.
Let's talk about your 83-year-old mom who's got your late brother's worth of stuff, your late father's worth of stuff, your childhood stuff, her stuff. Her home is filled with papers and objects, and I've been to it, and she's lovely, but she's got too much stuff, Tony.
Like, let's prefix this with my mum's 83, but doesn't look 83. She's fit, she's healthy. There's nothing sort of terminal or anything like that about her with illnesses. She does have a house full of, as you call it, ephemera. I call it crap, which is kind of from everywhere. And in all seriousness, it does stress me out. I mean, I don't have a wide family. I know you've got like brothers and sisters and everything like that who can it can quarter the work or a third of the work. But this is going to all lie on me, right? When my mum passes away, I already don't deal well with death anyway. So I'm going to be in like a really bad way anyway, losing my mum. And now I have to do admin.
Enter Katarina Blom, who's with us. She's a licensed psychologist, and she's got a show on NBC called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. And we're going to talk about how to deal with aging loved ones. Tony's aged loved one, who's got a house full of stuff. Katarina, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we've lost my dad and we've lost my brother. So talking about death in any way is very difficult with my mum. It's got better over the years, but it's still quite difficult. My mum is a hoarder anyway. She stores and keeps everything. She's got like bills and things from like the 90s and 2000s. She is starting to clean it because what I've tried to do is corral other members, like her sister and from America stuff, to kind of encourage her to say, you know, when you pass, then obviously your son has to deal with it. Let's make it as easy for him as possible so that it's not more stressful. It's still very difficult, and I feel that sometimes when I've kind of brought it up, she's either got upset or got annoyed because she thinks I'm pushing her too much. But it's stuff that she says, oh, we can sell this, or we can, and it's not worth anything, right? And it's kind of just holding her back. And I think those are the big things. I think if she started, and then it would it's like anything, right? If you start and you start cleaning up, but...
No, I just feel so much for her. Like, she's already lost 2 family members. And of course, when you come knocking and like, please, let's do this, like, wow.
Yeah, she's stuck with me. I mean, she lost the 2 good ones and just stuck with a run, you know?
Oh, God.
No, I don't believe that.
Before the break, you were talking about how it's cultural in Sweden to do this over a lifetime. I think there's a lot of people where I live in North America, where Tony is in the UK, where they're so far behind. They've got so much stuff. And when they pass, they're going to leave just tons of clutter and papers. How do you go from the extreme case of never having done this before to having your affairs in order?
And Katarina, it's almost the culture here not to talk about this, just to dig our heads in the sand and think people are going to live forever. So it's the complete opposite of what you said before the break. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, I know. And it's that's why I think it's so well needed, this method, to actually find a place where you feel more alive, where you feel closer to yourself and everything, because you've been through all the items that's telling you that life is actually finite, that it is ending at one day. But I'm thinking, because that like pressure on your chest, Tony, that's very real. And I can see 1,000 ways to procrastinate, like starting with this, especially as your mom being kind of a roadblock. Even if we understand her, she's actually functions as a roadblock for you right now. So I think you really need to find a good like strength and motivation to why you should like get going with this. And I really do think you should lean into that anxiety that you're feeling, because it's telling you something very important, that this is a pressing matter. And the sooner you start having these conversations with your mom, the better. And it's all about some kind of exposure therapy way that you will get past this, that you need to stop avoiding and start like stepping into this with her. And I'm thinking about what would be the gentlest way that she would feel the least bad about starting with this.
I mean, from a selfish context, I know, and David knows me well enough to know, and some of the listeners know, that I'm very sensitive to that. Even like talking about you now, it's making me think of like the most awful things. And you're very sort of methodical about the way you do it. So there's preparation on both sides, not just my mum, but also for me, right?
Yeah. And that's part of why this can be so therapeutic. It's a way to handle grief through objects, because grief can feel so muddy and just big and nestled into itself somehow. There's so many feelings in grief. So it can be hard to like, where should I begin? And just to step into your father's room, for example, and looking around, maybe taking your mom under her arm and saying like, I would love to do this work with you because I don't want to do this alone. Please be the mother I need right now. Like that could be one way of you supporting each other, because you're both struggling with this issue.
The British way is don't talk about things that are painful. But what I'm hearing from you, Katarina, is like exposure therapy. It's going to be painful.
Yes.
Do it little by little. Do a first step at the time. Maybe even start by going into the room and talking about it, but not touching anything. The next day you go back in the room, touch a little more.
Yes. And don't forget the fika. Like it's also very important as a way to like exhale, integrate. What did we just experience? How did you feel? How did I feel? Let's do it again. Like, what do you notice in this room? What makes you think of, like, you can just start by sharing memories of your dad and your brother. I mean, that is such an important conversation that you won't be able to have with any other person. She knew them like you knew them. So it's really important that you start having this conversation. It can also function as a way to approach the difficult areas. So that can be also like what's the word? Like arrow. Are you going towards or away?
Wow.
That's the only question.
You're amazing, Katarina.
Yeah, you are amazing. And for those who weren't listening, so before the break, Katarina mentioned filter. She wasn't talking about filter coffee. What she was kind of saying is post this cleaning or post this discussion, you do something positive, right? You sit and you have a cup of tea or cup of coffee or whatever, you know? So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Step one, Tony, is go in the room with your mom, talk about it, and then go, what do British people do? Have tea and crumpets, you know?
Correct. Tea, crumpets, biscuits.
Amazing.
And then talk about the monarchy.
Talk about the Queen.
Perfect.
I mean, you could use the loss of the Queen as a way to enter this.
I could do, and can you imagine her death cleaning? I mean, she had palaces, David.
Why?
When people come out the other end of this, they've gone from having way too much belongings, way too much clutter, kind of their affairs not in order, suitable for them to pass, and come out the other end with, you know, cleaned houses, their next generation not feeling like they're going to be overwhelmed by the estate. How do people normally respond and feel after coming out of the other end of this Swedish death cleaning?
Yeah, so when we did when we shot the show in Kansas City, people had very crowded homes, and there was one response that kept coming back from everyone we met, and it was like, I can finally breathe. Like I can finally take deep, deep breaths. One person even said, like, her friends started to ask her, are you getting laid? Your face is glowing. And she was a widow, so it was very cute that they said that.
At the risk of overstepping here, I feel like, Tony, your biggest complaint with your mom's accumulation of items is this feeling like you can't breathe.
Yes.
So the outcome for this could be amazing for you.
It could be. I mean, it's something I think about almost daily. We broach it on the show from time to time. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I have to start getting over it. But even this conversation has been so amazing and it's been so cathartic. So thank you so much, Katarina.
Wow.
Step 1, invite Katarina Blom onto your radio show. That's the first step for everybody. You can check out Katarina on NBC's The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Katarina, we've really enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And Tony, I'm sending you big Swedish hugs and good luck.
Thank you.
Coming up in just a few moments, romance, desert sunsets, and many, many giant spiders. It is tarantula mating season. They are on the prowl. We'll teach you about their epic journeys, their bizarre courtship rituals. Like, for example, I think the females eat the males after they're done mating. That does not sound sexy. We'll get the facts from someone who knows a little more than me and tell you about something called a tarantula hawk wasp after the break. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
It is tarantula mating season, and that means hundreds of fuzzy, love-struck spiders are crawling out of their burrows and into the spotlight. But fear not, there are those that say these gentle giants are more like Romeo than a horror movie villain, although I'm not one of them. I'm terrified of spiders. But let's talk tarantulas' fascinating behavior, where to find them, and how not to panic when you see them, if that's possible. I'm not sure it is. I'm here with Dan McCamish, a senior environmental scientist for the Colorado Desert District of California State Parks. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Good morning.
All right. I've recently heard, and this is definitely true, it's a fact that I just made up right now, 9 out of 10 people die every day from tarantula bites. Why are we not treating this like a global emergency?
Well, that is clearly a fact you just made up right now, right? Tarantulas are generally pretty harmless creatures. They are the largest spider that you will likely see ever in your life if you were to happen to see one. But generally, most and all 29 of our North American tarantula species, although they do have venom in their bite, it's generally a mild, non-reactive bite to humans. Most people compare it to a bee sting or less. So that fear is really, I think, driven through our pop culture media and things like that.
Well, I think it's evolutionary as well. Like, I'm sure some ancestor of mine in a cave saw a tarantula. If they were a little scared, they were more likely to live than another. So I feel like I can't control my irrational fear, but I can control how much I engage with it. And I will try not to engage with it any more than I already have. Let's talk about mating season. These creatures come out and they're excited during this time of year.
Yeah, that's what I think we want to talk about today. Is now is the time from kind of this early fall, late summer, however you want to call it, in these dog days here, up until late October, November, December. You're going to see male tarantulas out looking for a mate in both the desert Southwest and some of the southern states like Texas, Florida, those areas in particular. Tarantulas, the male tarantulas, emerge from their holes around this time. That comes with the influx of the late season weather, and so the temperatures begin to maybe cool at night. We get the inundation of the moisture regimes into the desert Southwest area, and that brings those tarantula mating feelings out, and the males go on the look for the females. The females will actually stay at home. They'll make a nice hole in the ground with a web around it, and they'll hang out near their hole. And the males can travel maybe across this time period, the 3 or 4 month time period. Males can travel anywhere from 20 to 25 miles on a solo crawl out in the evenings, starting after the sun goes down, and they'll be looking for a potential mate to join with.
And what are they looking for? Are they just looking for that web, that hole? Are there pheromones in the air? How do they find their fuzzy friends so that they can quickly get out of sight and not bite me? Sorry, I said I wouldn't fearmonger. Okay, that part I made up. But how do they find the females?
Yeah, it's mostly through pheromones and random crawling. tarantulas mainly are blind. Although they have all those eyes, they use sight in a different way than you or I would. So they use a lot of shadows and light. And what they use is the pheromones and other sensory perceptors to look for those holes. And they will go out and even do a little mating ritual dance, tapping on the web, etc., to notify the female that they're present if the female isn't already out. And if the female chooses the mate, they will exchange their nuptial gift with each other, and in the short term, if the female hasn't fed, it may actually predate the male. Otherwise, the male will try to scurry away quite frequently after.
So wait, they make love in the tarantula way, and then if the female's hungry, she eats the person she just mated with?
That can be a common thing in both the spider community and the tarantula community. I know here in Southern California, the California ebony tarantula that we have down here in the extreme southern part of the state, that is a common occurrence. In nature, of course, the habitat and the lifestyle in the desert can be a little bit harsh, so that nutrient source is really important if that female is going to reproduce and lay and take care of those eggs in the future. So,
what a guy!
It's a very, very sad end to the males, and generally, the difference between the two species too, or the two genders here, the male and the female. The female can live anywhere up, 20, 25, sometimes even longer years, but the male's life is generally completed after the mating. So 2 to 3 years in a burrow hole as it develops, up to 7 or 10 years as it develops to sexual maturity. Then after the male finds a mate, almost always it finishes its life cycle. So within a very short window compared to the female tarantula.
Where there are spiders on the prowl, so too are there predators. There is a wasp out there, and a wasp with the name like this has got to be a terrifying creature without even you describing it to me. It's a tarantula hawk wasp. What does it do during this period, or how does it lay its eggs? How does it predate on spiders?
Well, another one of those fascinating and bizarre and maybe even a little gross parts of our nature and world. The tarantula hawk wasp is a really, really big wasp, 2 inches long maybe, and they're bright orange. They have these bright orange wings. You can see them flying by, not only because they're so big, but because of that coloration. And the way they reproduce, you ready for the gross part, is they will land on the back of a tarantula if they can capture it or land on it, and they will actually impregnate the living tarantula with its larvae. It'll stun it with its sting, and then it will lay its eggs inside of it and will drag that tarantula back to a hole in the ground that it's prepared. The wasp has prepared a hole in the ground. It'll take it back, bury it in that hole, and then the insects will eat their way, the baby insects will eat their way out from the interior of the tarantula, meaning that tarantula probably did not enjoy the end of its life.
Dan, remind me never to leave my house again. What are some things about tarantulas and spiders that people don't know or that make them such fascinating creatures for study?
Well, I think one thing I'd always love to say is tarantulas are not uniform across the United States right now. There hasn't been a ton of deep dive into speciation, genetic speciation of them. The last one, I believe, reading literature is somewhere around 2008, 2009. We started to see genetic work done with them. And although there are 29 identified species in the U.S., I think it's known that if you were to continue that genetic work, we would end up speciating a lot more. So they're very unknown still. So we'd love for people to be interested in them. It's one of those species that doesn't get a lot of love, right? Because it maybe is so scary. But the other thing I want to just say, tarantulas in general are crucial components of their ecosystem. As predators, tarantulas help control populations of insects and other arthropods, such as beetles, grasshoppers, etc. They contribute to the ecologic balance by being ambush predators that help regulate that invertebrate biodiversity. They serve as prey They actually serve as food sources for things like coyotes or kit foxes out here in the desert. And last, the burrows that they make, the holes in the ground, they really improve soil aeration and water filtration. And those burrows can serve as refuge for lizards and other desert homes. So in short, the tarantulas serve as ecologic stabilizers. And so they're really important to our ecosystem.
Were you hired by Spider's PR crisis team to skew the negative media opinion of them? Because if you were, you're actually doing a great job.
Big tarantula has gotten to me. They've surpassed my government funds. And so,
well, I'm a little less scared of them, and they are fascinating creatures, and I guess people can try to watch them during mating season, but leave them alone is my advice. Dan McCamish is a senior environmental scientist for the Colorado Desert District of the California State Parks. Dan, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
Up next, we'll explain something that sounds like a friendly product: personalized pricing. It's not friendly. It's internet companies using AI to figure out the maximum amount they can charge you for their products. I know it sounds like doom and gloom and you're going to overpay because they're going to find you to be a sucker, but there's a way to beat this, and we'll give you details after the break. This isn't the first show, and I am David Cooper, because it's the last show.
Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Today, algorithms know more about us than some of our closest friends. And get this, when buying something online, the price you might see is not the price I see. That's right. Personalized pricing. It is on the rise, and it seems AI might be deciding what we pay for online these days. Can we fight back? Why is this happening? That is what we'll discuss here with Professor Jay Zagorsky, who's an economist at the Questrom School of Business at Boston University. Jay, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, David.
For someone who has never heard the term, it sounds kind of friendly in a way. Personalized. These companies care a lot about me. What is personalized pricing? I know I just gave a rudimentary or a crude definition of it, but what is it, and how is it different from like a regular sale or a regular discount?
So personalized or customized pricing is when every single customer receives a different price for the same product. And David, that's the holy grail. It's what businesses really want because it boosts profits. With personalized or customized pricing, people who are kind of free spending, people who don't really care so much about money, they pay a lot more. While the people who are price sensitive, they pay a little bit less. And it's sort of like custom tailoring for clothes. We can figure out not only the fit of a suit jacket or a skirt, we can actually figure out, are you willing to pay a lot for this or a little bit for it? And based on your desire, we'll set up a customized pricing or personalized pricing for you.
But this seems kind of not great for the consumer. Shouldn't they be paying what something is quote unquote worth, like whatever it costs the company to make or create, plus some profit margin, and it should be the same for everyone? Isn't that what's fair?
Well, so that's the idea that I've been trying to get across, that we have been used to set prices, where there's a single price, everyone pays the same thing, and that's been in existence since about the late 1800s. And it started off with a man named John Wanamaker at a Philadelphia department store. He had a problem, and the problem was he was trying to create a very large store with lots and lots of items. And before Wanamaker, you'd go into a store and you'd bargain with the owner. You'd say, oh, I want this shirt. And the owner would say, this is how much it's going to cost you. And they'd say, that's not enough. So we'd go up and down on price.
Haggling.
It happens all the time. And we still haggle over things like cars. So customized pricing still exists today in some areas. The problem is that while cars we only buy a few of and they're very expensive, what about small things like a jar of ketchup or some eyeglasses, something like that? It doesn't seem worth it for businesses to haggle, right? It's too expensive. Their customers don't really like it. But with AI, we can actually haggle or customers can get personalized pricing down to the individual eyeglass level or jar of ketchup.
Great. So I'm up against, like, robots can beat everyone at chess right now. There is no great chess player that can defeat the best chess algorithm that I know of today. Basically, AI is going to figure out what kind of sucker I am, how much they can get out of me, and not charge me like a fair price, not charge me what they're going to charge my neighbor who they don't think they can get that extra 50 cents for that bottle of ketchup from. Is that the future of pricing? Like, is this what it's going to look like?
It is the future of pricing. And why I talk about this is that there's ways to defeat AI. There's ways to get around this. Let's talk just what is AI. AI is models that are really good at predicting. If you use AI to write, for example, my students write papers for me, right? AI is just really good at making what's the best words that come next. Or sometimes in email, AI suggests, Jay, this is what you really want to say in this email. And I'm like, wow, how'd you know that? AI is wonderful at predicting, and it's wonderful at predicting prices. How much am Jay going to pay for that bottle of ketchup? But how do we defeat AI? The simplest way of defeating AI is preventing it from getting data. When AI has very little data, it's very bad at predicting.
Garbage in, garbage out, or not enough in, not good enough out kind of thing?
Right. Not enough in, not enough out, right? So if AI has basically nothing to understand and can't really understand who Jay is or who David is, then it's not going to be very good at predicting. So I've written a book, and the book's called The Power of Cash, Why Using Paper Money is Good for You in Society. And I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, I would never use cash. And my response is, yes. By using cash, you can regain some privacy. And people are like, I gave up privacy. Or my whole life is on, TikTok, Instagram, X, something like that. And I say, yes, but AI models are taking all the information you're providing them, all those things you've been buying, and they're now understanding who you are. So if you don't tell AI who you are and use things like paper money, and I'm going to talk in a second about some other ways for people who don't want to use cash. If you use things like paper money, then they don't know what you purchased and what you paid for that.
Interesting. So like, I buy some stuff at Walgreens using a credit card. That data of those purchases can now be sold to like Amazon, and then Amazon can use what I bought at Walgreens to try to predict what I'll pay on Amazon. I'm not saying that example exists in the wild, but something like that could happen if I used a credit card.
I think the examples are going to happen more in the wild than you think. I talk a lot about supermarkets to my MBA students, Masters of Business Administration, and I say supermarkets nowadays make money two ways. One, by selling you products, selling you that bottle of ketchup.
And the other is you're the product.
Well, the other is selling information about, what you bought ketchup and what else did you buy with it.
That's what I mean. They're selling you products, and then they're selling you as a product, what you purchase.
Exactly. Two streams of revenue for supermarkets, for other things. Credit card companies, they make money. You don't pay interest. They make interchange fees, all these kind of things. But they're also making money because businesses want to understand who their customers are.
So wait, those points they give me that I, occasionally get a free flight every 10 years, they might not actually be worth it because the data that they use to track me could then be used to sell me more expensive stuff?
Exactly.
Whoa.
Exactly. So a lot of listeners right now are going, oh, I don't want to give up my credit cards. I don't want to give up my points, things like that. So my response is use cash for small purchases. And if you're buying something really big, then use a credit card and rack up the points. You're not racking up that many points for a $10 purchase, for a $15 purchase. So try and hide as much data as you can. That's one way. For those people who are saying, well, I'm buying things on the internet. Since I'm buying things on the internet, I can't use paper money. There's no way to take a bill and shove it through my screen, or if I'm on my phone the same way, then I say there's a couple of ways. One, you really want to make sure your cache is cleared, get rid of your browsing history, these kind of things. Number two, be careful of your location. What do I mean by location? I travel quite a bit as a professor, and I speak in lots of different places. I was in Botswana, and I needed an airplane ticket to South Africa. And the next day, I opened up my laptop. I typed in, I wanted to go from Botswana to South Africa. They said about $200. I said, great. My wife said, time for dinner. Didn't have time to buy the tickets. Went off for dinner, came back, and I accidentally logged in with a VPN. And the VPN put me back in Boston, back in North America. And I asked for the airplane tickets, and the price went up to $1,000.
Interesting. So international VPNs really confuses these models.
Right. It confuses these models. And it was like, wow, you're in a rich neighborhood. You can pay a lot. You're not in a relatively low income area of Botswana. And then I suddenly realized the VPN was on. I shut off the VPN. I cleared the cache. And the price went back down to $200 for the tickets. And I was like, whew. Luckily, I figured that one out.
It can be as subtle as regional within a country. It can be as not so subtle as international pricing. This is a well-known thing about airlines. So just try to confuse these companies that are tracking you, giving you quote-unquote personalized prices.
So it's pretty simple. Try and confuse them, and also try and make sure there's as little data as possible. And remember that in the modern society, privacy is gone and everything is being tracked, but not everything is being tracked accurately.
I wonder if there's some way in which the consumer can tell these companies, hey, it's not fair, like, oh, this company does that and we punish you by not shopping there. I wonder if that's kind of part of it too.
People have asked me, what do you predict? And I predict in 5 or 10 years, there are going to be some companies that are going to advertise, we have set prices. We do not do custom pricing. And one example would be the large chain called Costco. Costco basically says we mark everything up 14 or 15%, and that's it.
That's the great future we're going to. Hold on to your cash and get rid of the cards, I guess. I'm here with Professor Jay Zagorsky, an economist at the Questrom School of Business at Boston University. Jay, it's been great chatting with you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Up next, whether you realize it or not, if someone has a high voice, you probably trust them more with your money. The reasons why in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We work hard to strike the right amount of intelligence and ignorance. The last show with David Cooper.
Who do you trust with your money and why? It might come down to subtle cues that you didn't realize, like the pitch of someone's voice. New research reveals how higher-pitched voices can sway your financial decisions, even when your logic about who you trust with your cash says otherwise. Are we really that easily persuaded? Let's discuss with Dr. Jillian O'Connor, an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Houston downtown. Jillian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
At a very high level, why look into who we trust with our money and things like their voice, subtle cues? Why is this of interest to you?
Well, our voices really seem to have this strong but kind of ignored impact on how we see other people. So it can change whether we find someone who's, really attractive, if we think that they're a leader, if we think that they're, someone who knows what they're talking about. And so one of the things I'm really interested in terms of first impressions like that is trustworthiness, because that seems to guide a lot of our day-to-day interactions. If you're going to ask someone to watch your laptop while you run to the bathroom, or if you're, going to let someone babysit your kid, trust is a really important sort of glue for society. And one of the most sort of day-to-day interactions that we have are financial exchanges, right? So someone might ask to borrow money, we might be trying to get a loan, or someone might be asking us to round up our bill for charity. And so it's those interactions I'm interested to see, are we always sort of cold and logical, or does this other sort of subtle cue we don't often think about come into play and maybe boost us to give a little bit more, or maybe we sort of keep a little bit more money for ourselves in those scenarios?
We'd all like to think we're cold, logical, level-headed. We'd make the same decision every time when presented with the same facts. But in reality, that's rarely true. It seems that we would trust higher-pitched voices with our cash. Tell me how you found that out.
Yeah, so what I did is I had listeners come in and play this hypothetical game. So just to explain the game a little bit, if I had $10 and I decided to send some of this money to you, for example. Let's say I sent all $10. It would get tripled and you would now have $30. Now, the key here, though, is you can decide if you want to sort of reward my trusting of you by, say, let's split the money 50-50. We each get $15. Or if you go, haha, I have $30 now. I'm going to keep it. You're out of luck. So that's the sort of decision we have participants do. So listeners, they listen to either higher voices or lower voices. And that's the only information they had while playing this game. And then they decided, will they trust this person with money? And if so, how much? And it turned out that they would send more money to the people with higher pitch voices. Now, a sort of trick here is we actually reversed the roles and said, okay, what if you're the person that has to decide how much money you're going to reward this trust with? And we did it for all different levels, is like $1, $10 and up. And the same thing actually happened. People returned more money to people with higher pitch voices. So it seems to benefit us in two different ways. One is that we think people with higher pitch voices are more trustworthy with money, so we'll send it to them. But on the other hand, we also reward them with more money ultimately.
Wow, this seems like a lot of benefit. As someone whose career is really embedded in my voice, I'm thinking of maybe trying to get it higher or something here. How fast does the bias kick in? Like, do I have to hear someone speak for hours before I make a subtle decision on pitch? Or can this bias kick in almost immediately, like the first utterance, the first syllable, the first word?
Yeah, it kicks in almost immediately. So we had speakers just say the word hello before they were playing the game. And that's less than a second. So we don't need a whole lot of information. We just need a really brief sort of sound clip to hear what someone, if they're sort of higher pitch or lower pitch, not necessarily a conscious decision, but it's something that can push us. In fact, when I was looking at the monetary difference, it seems to be about $1. So if we're going to trust someone with, a lower pitch voice, we'll send them around $3.50. But if it's someone with a higher pitch voice, we actually send them about $4.65. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just one interaction. Imagine doing that over and over and over again. You could end up actually with quite a benefit if you have a higher pitch voice getting, like 50 cents to $1 more depending on the interaction. So it's sort of the subtle cue we don't think we're aware of in any case. But it can definitely sort of push us to be sort of more open with our finances.
What subtle associations do people have, even though they think they don't have them, with high pitch and also maybe oppositely with low pitch voices?
Yeah, so I'll sort of speak about men and then women because it really goes in different directions. So men tend to benefit from a lower pitch voice in a lot of interactions. So they sound more attractive. We think they're more likely to be leaders. We think they're more dominant. But on the flip side of this, we are also way more cautious about them. So we think they're more likely to cheat on their romantic partner. We think they're less likely to invest in a romantic relationship.
Whoa.
And from this recent study, they also sound more likely to take financial risks, like gambling or playing the stock market. So we might think on some level, wait, if they're going to be risky with our money, maybe we shouldn't give it to them. Maybe we should give it to someone else with a higher pitch voice. Now, we see similar patterns with women, except for it's the higher pitch voice amongst women that's seen as more attractive. Lower pitches actually sounds as more trustworthy, just overall. And then higher pitch, again, is seen as more financially trustworthy. So there's sort of like not one good voice to have. It really depends on the social situation that you're in. You can't say low voices are always going to win or high voices are always going to win. So if it's about maybe initial attraction, maybe it's sort of low male and high female. If it's about, finances or trustworthiness, it might be somewhat different.
Are there any truth to these biases, or are they just biases that we have? I'm curious, if I have a lower voice, am I more likely to be the way that people perceive me to be when handling money?
Well, we don't have any evidence to suggest that there's a true link that you could predict someone's financial behavior from their voice. It's really just what we think about people. However, when we look at other associations, men with lower pitch voices actually do report cheating on their romantic partners more than men with higher pitch voices.
Oh, no.
So, the perceptions that we're building, they are rooted somewhat in reality, but we're not quite sure how accurate that is for money just yet.
And on an individual level, we're greater than the sum of what people bias us to be. But that is really interesting. Are there major takeaways that you would have people know now that this research is out? Like, okay, I've got a phone call with the bank. Maybe I should try to check my own biases here. Or any major takeaways from the study you would want people to know?
Yeah, I think the really important message here is just to sort of do a gut check and say, am I being swayed by some sort of superficial cue, like their voice, or even other things like how they're dressed or how they look, versus cold, hard facts? Because if we can push against those biases, maybe we can actually have more positive, sort of outcomes and more positive income. But I wouldn't suggest people try and fake their voice, because that seems to have some negative outcomes down the road too.
Oh, really? Why people think you're a phony baloney if you fake your voice, or what?
Exactly. And it doesn't seem to necessarily make us sound more attractive or more dominant. It seems to be that our normal speaking voice is just about right.
I'm reminded of that CEO Elizabeth Holmes, who had that seemingly artificially low voice. You know, there are people out there with these voices that it seems so obvious that they've changed them, and we have a completely different reaction than we'd have if that seemed to be their natural voice, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the thing is, those sorts of examples really suggest how powerful the voice can be in day-to-day life.
Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing your research with me. I appreciate your time, Jillian. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Jillian O'Connor is an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Houston downtown. All right, moving on. Most people get their ADHD diagnosis early in life, but realizing you have it later in life can change everything, especially when folks thought you had your life together. After the break, we'll talk to someone who got diagnosed at age 32, and how she made sense of it all is unexpectedly relatable. That's coming up.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Realizing you have ADHD later in life can feel like someone finally handed you a missing piece of your own user manual. Our guest was 32 years old, and although highly productive and organized, the diagnosis came nonetheless. It surprised some people, but not her. I am joined by Tayla Blaire, a freelance writer and contributor at Business Insider, to talk about it. Tayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
Let's start with this aha moment. What pushed you from suspicion into actually seeking an ADHD diagnosis?
So mostly it came about from spending an embarrassing amount of time on social media and seeing all these reels, TikToks, and so on with ADHD jokes and going like, oh, that's hilarious. Oh, yeah, that's me. I relate to this so hard. I'm going to send this to people around me. And then it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't actually think, and probably having studied psychology has something to do with this, you can just find something relatable and say, okay, well, this is now my diagnosis.
Sure.
And it was one of those things where I was coming across quite a few reels about like difficulties. If you have ADHD, you're going to struggle with this or that. And it was one of those things where I was resonating with those too. And it occurred to me that maybe getting a formal diagnosis could be helpful. And as somebody who encourages other people to seek out experts and get formal diagnoses to help them function, like when it's friends and that kind of thing, if someone suspects depression, I'm the first person to tell them to go see a psychologist, see a psychiatrist, etc. And then I was like, oh, well, you are a hypocrite. And you should probably go and find out if this applies to you or if you're just, finding a bunch of memes relatable online.
Let's talk about that process of finding out. How does one even get evaluated for ADHD? I'm kind of curious about this. You just go to a psychiatrist, take a few tests, talk to them, boom, you got your diagnosis?
Pretty much, yeah. So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I think I hyped it up in my head that it was going to be this obstacle course. But I mean, look, your listeners, I'm not sure how complex it is for them to go and seek out a specialist. In South Africa, it's incredibly easy where I'm based. I made an appointment with a psychiatrist. I had an appointment within a couple of weeks. I went off, sat with her for 2 hours. I said, I think ADHD is something that I resonate with, and she asked me a bunch of questions. One of them was like, well, how did the suspicion come to pass? And we got chatting about it. And then she had an assessment that we went through line by line. She handed it over to me. I filled it in. She double checked a few things that she wasn't sure why I'd indicated, X or Y. And then she literally, I think it was like 30 seconds, scanned over it and then went, yeah, you have ADHD. Congrats on the self-diagnosis. Consider this your formal diagnosis. Right, let's talk about medication. And we moved on.
The stereotype, and I'm sure this is wrong, is that folks with ADHD are not productive, not organized, let the procrastination impulse win. That is not you, is it?
So yes and no. It's probably the reason I didn't associate with the label for so long, because it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, the ADHD person is number one. I had stereotypes about like hyperactivity, right? They can't sit down. They're always the ones who were like spinning and falling out of their chair in class. They were the ones who weren't handing things in on time, the ones who were tuning out. And I tuned in, but only when it was something I cared about. So science class, like there's this photo that pops up on Facebook periodically, Facebook memories, of the cover of my science exam from my final year of high school. And it was Taylor Swift lyrics. It was mathematical calculations for the boy I was interested in at the time. And like our compatibility based on our names. I don't know if you ever did that, where you cross out names and you work out a percentage for your compatibility. It was loads of fun.
No, I'm slightly worried about you, but please keep going.
You should be, probably. And yeah, so I finished my exam like 2 hours early, and that was what I wrote on the cover. I did not do well in that exam, in case we're interested. But I always did really well in subjects that I was fascinated by. And when it came to university, I sought those out. I studied psychology, I studied English, but the hyperactivity was never really a thing. And I didn't realize how much of my life I'd actually outsourced to all these coping mechanisms that I'd put in place. So like, turns out, not everybody has 1,000,001 lists, like a day list, a week list, a month list, a year list. That's not normal. I thought everybody did that. Turns out not the case. I thought, everybody like brings people into conversations 70% of the way through, because I've had the rest of it in my head, and I bring you in at like the 30% to go mark. Turns out not everybody does that either. So it was all these things that I just sort of assumed everyone did, and then came to realize over time, no, they don't.
How did getting diagnosed at 32 change the way you saw your past, like school, relationships, work? Were there moments in your life that now kind of make a lot more sense now, other than the calculation of boyfriend's name on the notebook cover?
Yes. And I'm reading a book right now by Meredith Carter called It All Makes Sense Now. And it's basically like making sense of your ADHD diagnosis. And I mean, the first thing I said is I turned to my husband and I was like, if I had had this diagnosis when I was like, the median age for diagnosis is 7 years old, apparently. Wow. And if I had gotten it at that age, I'm like, I'd be like a professor at MIT right now. I mean, like, I have nothing to back up this statement, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh my God, if I could have just focused in like subjects I hated, if I could have like not felt so damn weird every time I overshared or was like too much in a social situation, if I could the amount of times since my diagnosis, which is now like, I don't know, all of like 1 month old at this point, I am like, something will happen, like what almost happened there, where I'm like about to lose my train of thought. If you heard me trailing off and going, no, come back, I can now go, well, it's ADHD. And I can just sort of brush it off and dismiss it. But it's one of, like, there's a bit of sadness, I think, looking back at all the things I didn't know about myself. But, if they say like the best time to plant a tree was like 50 years ago, the next best time's now, well, at least I've got the knowledge now, right?
Yeah. Going back to some of the misconceptions, you mentioned that your productivity or hyperproductivity was a form of camouflage.
Yeah. So it's, I basically started tuning into the fact that I would procrastinate if I didn't put measures in place. So I kind of outsourced my executive functioning, would be like the technical terminology, I suppose, for it, where I would, I've been with my husband since I was, I didn't get married at 20, but we've been dating since I was 20. And I would I'd say to him, this is the task I have to do. This is the date I have to do it by. You've got to make sure, please, that I've done this and this and this by this point. And he was amazing with it. He continues to be amazing with it. So in terms of like taking my productivity and putting it onto somebody else, if he didn't do that, I don't know if I would be functioning in my career right now. I'm not convinced I would have graduated as academically soundly as I did. There's just, there are a lot of things that he takes care of. I mean, even my phone, if I've got like a lot of deadlines, a lot of articles I need to hit, a bunch of interviews, that kind of thing, I literally go to him like I'm a high schooler having my phone confiscated, and I hand it over and I go, do not let me have this back until I can prove to you this article's done.
You mentioned some regret about getting this diagnosis late in life, but it sounds like the way that you structured all your accountability to your husband, hyperproductivity, it kind of shaped who you were. You might want to reframe this idea that like you would have liked to have gotten diagnosed sooner. Not being diagnosed got you to where you are today. I just think it's really good that you got that diagnosis today. So that thing you said about the tree really rings true for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the, I mean, I think the regret is like, I could be the mastermind of the entire universe at this point, theoretically, if I'd had access to Ritalin sooner in life. But it is one of those things where I don't regret it. I don't regret the way it's played out at all, because pursuing my interests, having these coping mechanisms I put into place, I'm really thriving in the space I am now. I love what I'm doing. I love my writing. I love traveling. And if ADHD got me here, then so be it.
The article's called I'm Highly Organized and Productive, and so my ADHD diagnosis at 32 surprised some people. I'm here with freelance writer and contributor at Business Insider, Tayla Blaire. Tayla, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, David. Have a great day.
That's the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow night before heading off to the desert for a few weeks for a romp. Fill-in host Caitlin Green will take the helm of the show. Don't forget the last show available as a podcast. Head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's not .com, .pizza. And there you can find out more details, including how to subscribe. Thank you very much. I am David Cooper. This is not the first show.
They come from Survivor. They come from Big Brother. They know what they're doing.
These vets wrote the playbook, and they have all had to earn their stripes.
How did you win Survivor?
Manipulating people. Same thing I'm going to do here.
And now, new threats will enter the game, hungry to forge a new legacy.
Once we train them, it's going to be hard to contain.
This really, truly is the most even matchup that I've seen in a long time.
The Challenge, Vets and New Threats. All new Wednesday on Slice and stream on Stack TV.